So, I want today, actually, that if you walk out of this room, that you know two things. First, what is a patent? And second, why should you care? And I'm just going to test a little bit your knowledge of intellectual property. And for that, I want to start with property as such. What is property? And it's an odd question. If you can explain property in 2 words, what would you say?
Ownership. Yeah, just regular ownership. I think one word. Like
Ownership.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If I walk in, you see a lot of these bikes. Who of you has one of these? Can I see hands? 1, 2, 3, 4. What is your emotion if this bike gets stolen?
Not my problem.
It's not your problem. Although you have to pay 300, 350 euros or not? 30. It's not your problem. But what is another problem with these bikes? I saw there some hands. What is a typical problem if you have such a bike? I don't know who was showing that.
There are a lot of them, they look the same.
You can't find them.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're 100% fungible. And I don't know if you have ever heard of the word fungible. Non-fungible token. It's quite a hot thing at the moment. Fungibility is something like there is a value in it, but you can totally exchange it for something else. Typically, example is a swap feature. Now this, who has no mobile telephone? Cool. Who of you has ever experienced your mobile telephone being stolen? What was your emotion?
Pissed off.
Yeah. And why?
Because it was my phone and it contains some personal information and cost a lot of money. So that's probably why.
Strong emotion. So you see, if you have something fungible, then there's no emotion involved in if you lose it or if you gain it. And if something is not fungible, it's the other way around. There's lots of emotion involved. That's a bit what I want to explain, that property really reflects emotions. But not only emotions. If you see this is a property, but it's bare land. This is also property, maybe you recognize it. Property also has value. And this value is a reflection of that you have, like your phone, you have put effort in, you have put time in, and sometimes also it reflects competence. And that is actually what a patent is all about. It is a sort of effort and a sort of competence, and as a reward you get, therefore, something back. And there's always a relation between the ownership and the thing you own. So a patent is typically non-fungible. Actually, you cannot get a patent for something that is not new or inventive. So the moment it becomes something that's already there, you cannot get that right. And this relationship between owner and the goods or the estate is already very long. Is it respected and punished if you breach this ownership? If you steal it, you will be punished. This is a very old law system, and already there, if you commit robbery, you will be killed. Well, the same thing you find in the Bible, you shall not steal, but also in the system of, of the Hinduistic beliefs, and of course in the Quran. So, intellectual property is not only effort and time what you get, but it is actually an option on value. And this option is not always given. So, what is this option? It is a time-limited, country-limited monopoly. And how does this monopoly work? It is not that if you have a patent, you are not allowed to make the products that are falling under his patent. No, he should sue you for infringing his patent. So you get a monopoly but you have to actively defend your rights. It is not something the government is doing, although they supply the judges and the system, especially the custom system, to how to say
Enforce.
yeah, to enforce the patent and to get in the stuff. I'm losing the word. So actually, a patent is a reward, and the reward is a philosophy from our societies, most societies in the world, that if you bring this effort and you neatly write it on paper and you file it, and it is indeed new and inventive, you get this temporary monopoly. That's the idea. But it's not only a reward, it is also a recognition of the inventor. So you see there's two parties involved, that is the owner and the inventor. It can be the same person. Especially in the US systems, you can only file a patent as an inventor. In the other systems in the world, you can file a patent as applicant, later the holder of the right, whereas the inventor is somebody else, an employee or a third party. And for that, we have a legal framework, that's the law, the patent law. What you get is an economic monopoly, and where you get it for is a technical solution. And typically, how does it look? Well, I let this go around. You find these three parts, so the technical part, the legal part, and the economical part, you find in the various parts of this patent, you find it back. I put on some notes, then you can see. This is an invention. This is a further development of a client. And what I want to ask you, just to study the figures and see if this falls under this patent. Just have a look. So if you can pass it around, if you have studied it. So that is the cool thing. There's three fields coming together: the economical part, the technical part, and the legal part. And that is all reflected in these documents. And in order to get your patent, in order to get it right, you have specific requirements. That's the legal part. First, it must be new. And it is, if you go to the yellow page, the yellow tab, can you read the last paragraph?
It's in Dutch.
Yeah, I try to translate it a bit.
De dekselopener volgens conclusie 1 verschilt in zoverre van de dekselopener geopenbaard in D1 dat de as in hoofdzaak een buisvorm omvat.
Okay, stop. So it is a cap opening device, and it says in this line, this is a line that is written by the examiner who studied my patent application to see if it is new, yes or no. And he says, hey, the axle is not a tube, but it is a single stud axle. In that sense, this patent application is new. Yeah, please continue.
Het voordeel hiervan is dat de diameter van de as groter kan zijn, zodat de as sterkere krachten kan weerstaan, terwijl de hoeveelheid benodigd materiaal relatief laag blijft. Zie aanvragen op bladzijde 2, regelstuk 4.
Okay, stop. So, there it says, the advantage of using a tube instead of a single stub is that it can resist bigger forces. And that is, before you say anything, that is the second requirement, is the invention also inventive? And if you read the last line.
Een vakman die de dekselopener uit D1 wil voorzien van een sterkere as zonder meer materiaal te gebruiken, zal kiezen voor een buisvormige as.
Okay, and then the next page.
Het is namelijk algemeen bekend dat bij hetzelfde gewicht een buisvormige as sterker is dan een massieve as. Conclusie 1 is daarom niet inventief.
So, that is the judgment of the examiner. He says, okay, it is known, switching from how would you say, a stub-like axle to a tube-like axle in order to resist bigger forces. So this patent application has not got a valid patent. Although, and now I teach you a bit of the Dutch system in the Netherlands. Because we have a European patent system, there's very, very few Dutch patents still found. So what did the Dutch Patent Authority decide? We are not going to have a staff examining all our patents and granting them. So we grant all of them, and only if there's infringement, then we look if it was validly patented, yes or no. So although there is a report in this patent that is stating it is not inventive, I got my patent granted. And if I now sue somebody who is infringing my patent, then that person can say like, hey, look, there's a report that is saying it is not valid. I'm going to challenge the validity of this patent. So that is always the game as at the moment that you go into legal procedures. I say you are infringing, and you say your patent is invalid. That's the game. And it is a very complex game, or it can be very complex. Then there's a last requirement, and that is that it should be industrially applicable. Most of the technical things are industrially applicable. So this is a very soft requirement. But you have to understand something. If you have a completely communistic system where all the property is owned by the state, a patent system is useless. Actually, there is hardly anything more capitalistic than a patent. And that means that there is Darwinism. Only those patents that are somehow good, and that's very difficult to translate, will survive. And that's about 2%. Most of the patents fail not because of technical requirements, but simply because of commercial failures. And it's really good to understand, and this is very, very valuable information. If you ever get into the position that somebody asks, hey, can you invest in my patent? And that person has no paying customers. And that person does not want to have this invention so bad that he's willing to lose a leg or an arm for it, then don't invest in it, because it's going to be among its 98% failures. The funny thing is, if you look at the human body, the DNA code for all our properties, only 2% is actually coding. It is weird that the same laws seem to apply in natural systems as in patents. Laws of Darwinism. Funny enough. So 2% is successful, 98% is junk. But the junk is there not for nothing. And I will explain that this junk, but also this 2%, is a very valuable source of information for you to look through and to see what you should decide yes or no. So it's really, really interesting. And just to give you an example, this is a really cool one. Anyone knows this person? He's the inventor of these kind of things. These are solar cells. And the very first solar cell was made in 1884. This is on a roof somewhere in New York City. And this is the very first solar cell. I will pass this through. You can, if you take one out, look carefully. They're very brittle. They're very thin. These are silicon slices, so you can cut your hand open. But if you look at this patent, and then there's something really counterintuitive, because I told you that patents give monopolies. And if you think of a monopoly, you have something like, hey, you can dictate the price. That is true, but since this requirement of novelty and inventiveness is behind any patent, you see that although the number of patents, especially since 2000, rise to about 80,000 a year, the price of solar cells went down from the 1970s, that's the earliest date that I found some data, from $80 to now $3. And if you don't believe it, I looked yesterday, this is Alibaba, You pay 13 cents for one of these things that you now see, but they have about 4 watts of peak, how would I say, vermogen, power. So the cool thing is about 3 cents a watt, and you see this price is still going down, although the number of patents is that high. And why is that? You can only patent something that is new and inventive. So what does that for all the rest that is not falling within the scope of the invention? It's going to get cheaper because there's a better alternative. So it's really good to understand that the patent system is rather reducing the prices, is having a deflationary effect instead of an inflationary effect. That's really cool. Then I don't know if anyone has seen this or know this. Ever heard of Theo Tempels? He's the inventor of this little thing there. This product was about, it is that the patent has lapsed. After 20 years, your patent lapses, so this patent is not anymore valid. Anybody can now use the invention without paying any fees. But until 2 years ago, or 3 years, it's 99 that it lapsed, people were prepared to pay 6 to 10 cents more for each roll of beschuit. This man became extremely rich. He's a very, very humble person. He does not want to show on televisions. I know him personally, but this man has really amassed a volume of money. Only for selling less beschuit. Fascinating. So, license fees. What is a license?
The right to use something or to do something.
Yes, it is a. If you have a patent, you can sort of rent out the technology. So a license is a sort of rental agreement between a licensee and a licensor. And if you ever invent any technology, then it is very wise to search for licensees. I have to warn you though, it's really cool. Lucas's dad is a client of mine, and we are looking for lots of licensees for his inventions. The problem with license contracts is that most of the time somebody really likes to have a license and then does nothing. So if you have a license, it is good that if you have there some kind of part in the license that says like, hey, if you do nothing, you still have to pay me something. Because what happens if you have a patent for, I would say, Europe, and you license it out to Germany, and there's somebody who does nothing, but he has a license, then you have blocked your own patent, weirdly enough. I see you frowning.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't understand really how that works.
Okay. If you have a patent, is a right for a monopoly on an invention. That right you can exert yourself, but you can also rent it out. So for instance, I invented, where is it, the opener? Yeah, I invented an opener, and you happen to have a manufacturing company in Spain, and you would like to start making my openers. Then I can give you a license, and I say like, okay, I want a specific percentage, and you start producing. But what you can also do, if you are an opener producing company in Spain and you want no further competition, then you take a license from me and you do nothing. And especially if I gave you an exclusive license, then I cannot produce it anymore myself. You have the right to produce it and you do nothing, and actually I'm screwed. Does it?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you understand it now?
Yeah, yeah.
So this game you have to watch out for. So what would be a proper licensing rate? Well, these are actually these slides. You don't have to write them. They will be handed out. They have an idea between 0.1% to 10%, and this is always of the relevant value. If you have a company that is making mirrors for cars, you don't get a license fee for the whole car. You only get it for delivering the mirror, of course. So that's a bit an idea. And well, there's something really cool about patents, and that is if you have a startup. I don't know, any of you are thinking of having a startup somewhere in your life? Nobody? If you have a new startup and you search for investors, then the value of your company is assessed by the investors, and that is, well, it's very difficult to assess the value. It's good to know that somebody searched for what is the additional value if you have patents. In biotech, typically over $600,000 per patent. So it's good that if you think of starting up a business on a specific technology, that this is a major, how would I say, incentive to start getting a patent portfolio. And I don't know if anyone knows Dragon's Den. It is sort of, yeah, in the Netherlands you have the same program.
Yeah, it's called the same.
It's called the same, okay. This is on the English data. I just went through 10 seasons of Dragon's Den, and you see that the average valuation of a company with a technical invention that is potentially patentable is about 270,000 euros. Yet, if that company has a patent, then again you see that it's higher. Not as high as in biotech, but still almost 400,000 euros of additional value assessed by potential investors. Interesting to know. And if you look at the relative assessment, this is another way to look at it, is that the valuation divided by gross profit, if there's already profit being made, is about 14% higher for if you have patents, yes or no. And the reason for this is obvious. The moment you have patents, you are more likely to stop or hinder competition from starting to do the same. That's the whole idea of a patent. So, why should you care? Well, in the databases of patents there is about 120 million documents. And these are all available at the tip of your finger for free. That's a really cool thing. And anyone ever heard of the website Espasnet? Have you looked at it? Do you use it?
Not as much.
Okay, and you have seen it? Have you used it?
Yeah, we had to use it for the project.
Okay. What is your feeling about it?
It's a lot of information, but if you know how to use it, it can be really useful.
Cool. When was it?
A few years ago during my minor.
Okay, they changed the interface. It's really good to look. It's, the interface is now about 3/4 of a year, and there's far more information still to be extracted out of this database. In the second hour, we are going to sit here, and I'm going to ask you several designs to see if I can find them in the databases. So that's the second hour. I don't know how long are we in now.
We still have about 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay. So why searching? Well, to know what is available, what is the state of the art, but also to get inspiration. You want to, sometimes you have a design, I don't know, but I think you have to all make a sort of harbor part design, either a crane or a storage facility or whatever. Well, if you have never seen these things, what should it look like? Well, there's a really good way to get an idea from what is designed, what is already. To know what do others, especially if you want to start up a company, you would like to know what are the competition making, doing, and potentially having for kinds of rights. And another thing is that if you like this patent that is now going around, I don't know where it is. Yeah. There is the assessment, if it is new and inventive, is always done on reflection to what is already there. So if there's a lot of information already there, like this cap opener, then they look for the differences. Is there no difference? Then it's not new. And is the difference, if there is that adding sufficient inventiveness to what is already there to reward you a monopoly for 20 years. That's a bit the idea. So it's also really good if you want to apply for rights to see like, hey, do I have any chance of getting a right, yes or no? And, well, if you are in a competition field, what I already told you is like, the game is, if I say, you are infringing my patent, then you say, your patent is not valid. Well, this is a great source to search if patents are valid, yes or no. You're just going to see what was already there before the patent was granted, and is this difference indeed sufficient to grant the patent, yes or no. So that's another reason to search. And this is a bit what I already told you. The invention should be a contribution to the art. It is the philosophy of patents is like, we reward you a monopoly for 20 years for specific countries, only if you deserve it. You have brought the entire planet a little step further. So, how can you search in a patent database? Well, I told you already. Oh. You have Spasnet and Google Patents. There's a very, very essential difference between Spasnet and Google Patents. And that is that Spasnet is given out by the European Patent Office, and Google Patents is given out by Google. Google is collecting data. So if you search for your new coffee machine on a horse saddle, and you type in horse saddle coffee machine, then Google is storing your search questions. So it might be, and it's not likely that Google is starting any time soon something in the horse saddle business, but still, it is good to realize that if you use Google as a search engine, that you might disclose the invention to a corporation where you have already given them the right to give all your information to sell it to third parties. So actually, you might disclose your invention simply by searching it. That's why, especially if you want to get rights for patents, do not use Google as search, but use Spasnet. So that is what I say here. Be very suspicious using a Google search, because Google is watching you. Then, if you have the search engine, the easiest way to search is by just filling in keywords. Most patents have an English abstract, so if you use keywords, you will get quite some patents. But you also miss some. And to prevent that, you can also use the classification. And how does it work? All these documents are classified in, I would call them, boxes. And this classification system is called the IPC, the International Patent Classification. And there's a couple of sections, classes, subclasses. There's at least 5 levels, but sometimes 2 or 3 more, to classify all the technology that is within this database. And you already feel that if you search for keywords, especially if you have Japanese or French or patents with another language, that you're going to miss some of these patents. If you search in these classes, all these patents are classified. So then you have a far more certainty that you have found most documents that are in this class or in your field of technology. Well, there are a lot of sections. Most likely, we're going to search in this section. Looks like. And this is, I used to work at the European Patent Office. This was my class. So the people working at the patent offices, they are ascribed and assigned to specific classes. So they know pretty well what is in their specific field of technology, what is there available on literature, on documents, on patents. And this was typically for separation. I finished my study here at API, Apparatenbouw. and this is typically process equipment for the chemical industry. And in this field, there were only not so much, 802 publications at that time. This is a bit an older slide, so it might be a bit more. But there's some 65,000 other boxes. And the idea is here, I don't know if you heard a lot, think out of the box. In this case, try to think inside the box. Try to find the right box and look inside what is already there. And it is also good to realize that the examiners at the European Patent Office, but also at the various other patent offices, they put in intellectual work to make these classes. So if you're using the classification system to search, you use another 5,000 man-years of work. So that's what I really want to give to you is like, if you search only for keywords, then you're just something that's there for free to use, you're just not using. So that's why this classes is very, very powerful.
Has every patent only one classification?
No, that's the cool thing. And that's why class search is so powerful. It has the relevant classes for the invention. And this is really cool because I told you if you search for a horse saddle coffee machine, then you can search in the classes for coffee machines, and you can search in the classes for horse saddles, and only those documents that you find are among both classes are highly relevant for your invention. So that's the idea of these classes, is that you can use two concepts and you can make a cross-section of these two concepts, and there you find all your relevant documents. And in order to get the right class, because this class I already showed you, there's lots of it, you can again use a keyword search. And what I told you, there's a new interface. Now you can also, if you just do a keyword search in your search engine, you can see what is the frequency of all the classes. Fascinating. So you can, if you just type in horse saddle, then you can see all the relevant classes that are attributed to that kind of inventions. So that you can use. And that's one of the new features of the new interface. That's what I say here. Use a keyword search to look at these classes. And what is the idea? Indeed, is any invention you can sort of see if there's more than one general idea that you combine. And these ideas, if you cross them, then you find the most relevant state of the art. And this is a bit an indication. If you have your general ideas both find the correct class and you cross these classes, you find about 90% of all the relevant documents. So it's really good. And the moment you use more keywords, if you cross a keyword with a class or you cross two keyword concepts, then you're far lower in finding all the documents. And what is the idea? If you do this and you find 100,000 documents, well, you don't have a lifetime to read them all. It's totally impossible. I would say target always between 5 and 20 patents. If you have too little, broaden your classes. If you have too much, narrow your classes. But don't start looking in your documents before you have something like 20 hits maximum, because it is a lot of work. So that's what I say here, expand or reduce. And if you have some 5 really relevant documents, then you can start to study them. And there's one thing is really, really important, is that nowadays, and this is also since this new, how would I say, this new interface, you can now also find the citing documents. And why is that important? If you find a relevant document from 1948, and you would like to know what has happened ever since. So you would like to see all those documents that are citing this document. Well, there's now an option that you can find those. Very powerful, because in that sense you can search into the future. Up to now, of course. And there are already the side applications. Then another thing to search, if you really think like, hey, this is a relevant document, then you look especially for the inventor or the company that has patented the technology. So that you really see like, hey, what has this specific person done for other inventions? Because mostly inventors also have a very specific field of technology. And this is especially true for you, guys. Figures are your friends. Don't start to read in the text. I don't know if you saw this pattern. Reading this text in patent applications is a nightmare. Even for me, if I look at patents, I always look first at the figures. You see the most information from the images, and if the images are really relevant, then you can start going into the text and see what is the problem. And another friend is the very simple Ctrl F. Find words in the text. So, my message today. Patents are a source of information. That's the most important thing for you to know now. They can be a great help in your designs. So go and use Espasnet. And now I like to have some coffee. And I see you in 10 minutes.
Okay. Thanks.